You have a couple of sides that are already prepared to gram stain, and then you're going to be preparing some in here to gram stain from scratch. You're going to want to do the preparing of them at the beginning of this session because they're going to need to air dry. I'm going to do the cooking show version where you're going to see me prepare a slide, and then I have some that are already dried here that I'll go on to the next steps. So you can use a broth to make a gram stain, or you can use a solid plate to make a gram stain. We're going to do one of each. And so I have two slides. With the slides, we dispose of them afterwards, so feel free to mark on them with a permanent marker. If you need the tape, we'll be bringing that around in a little bit to do that. Make sure you put your name, the date, and what it is that you're looking at on here. The instructions for doing a gram stain are in Lab D. So the first thing we need to do is get the slide ready. So you're going to use the aseptic technique to get your loop ready. And you would want to assume that you would use these cultures again. So use aseptic technique to collect it. When you go in, it's going to grab a drop with the loop automatically. You place it on the slide, and then you're going to smear it around. You want to smear it around pretty good. You want to give yourself room to hold the slide so you can flame it, but you'll smear it around in there so that it will spread out and dry. Also, it's going to be easier to see your colonies if they're spread out.
Don't put it in the middle of the center of the slide like a finger.
If you put it off to one side, you have a little bit more space to hold on to. If you do in the center, just watch your fingers. You can get pretty close to these flames and not hurt yourself. If you're going to use a solid colony, what you're going to use is a drop of water. Being that this has to evaporate, a small drop is good. If you put a great big drop like that, you're going to be waiting here a while till it evaporates. So you use the aseptic technique again with the loop. All you have to do is touch the colony. You don't have to pick up the whole colony off of there. Smear it around in there. If it's too thick, it's actually really hard to see the cells. Spread it out. Sterilize that loop again before you set it on your work surface. And then you set those aside to evaporate to air dry. If you flame them before they evaporate to air dry, it's going to mess up your stain on there. It's not going to show up properly. They won't stain right in there. And so that's why you want to do that at the beginning of the class. So after they have air dried, you're going to heat fix them. You pass it through the flame a few times. You should be able to touch the back of your hand with it. If it's too hot for that, you've probably damaged your organisms a little bit. So the other thing I would recommend doing is plan everything you are going to gram stain to do at once, because you don't need to stain one at a time and watch. You can line them up on here. I'll set this over by one of the sinks, so you can take your gram stain kit over there and you can have two people working on the line of it. You can also do your gram stain on a paper towel. It's just a little bit messier. This will collect the stain in here and keep it nice and easy. So the first thing you're going to do is put crystal violet on the stain after it's been heat fixed. They're in these little dropper bottles for you to try and minimize how much stain you wear. You can wear gloves when you do this if you want. If this gets on your skin, it's going to be there a couple days. It's a pretty purple, but you know, not necessarily what you want on your skin. So you want to put on enough to cover the smear. Some videos will show flooding it all over the place with it. You'll also likely end up with some of you being purple if you flood it. So that's why I put the stain in these, to try and minimize the amount of purple you wear home. So you want to let it sit on there for about a minute. So we'll just pretend it's been a minute on here. Look for the next bottle that says grams iodine on there. This is going to help to drive the stain into the organisms. So you just put that on top of there. You want to make sure you're just dropping the stain on there. Try not to get the dropper in the existing stain so that these get mixed. So that sits on there for about a minute.
You put how many drops?
As many as it takes to cover. It's not a particularly picky stain. So then you're going to rinse that off with the water. Using the little water bottle is actually an easier way of doing it. Again, less mess to you. The sinks in here, you can't always predict the exact water pressure that's going to come out. So this will reduce the likelihood of backsplash into your face. And I don't know what was washed down the sink last. Next step is to decolorize it. This is where, if you're going to mess up a gram stain, it will usually happen. It's an alcohol acetone mix in here. If you know much about acetone, it rinses just about anything off. It's not technically a universal solvent, but we use it like it is. So if you use too much, you'll just wash your organisms right off. You use enough to rinse off the stain, and then you wash it off with water afterwards. If you leave that sitting on there too long, organisms are going to be gone.
Is that tap water in the bottle?
Yes. Technically, deionized water is what you want. We are using tap water because it's what we have. And then you do the counter stain with saffron in. Somebody grab me a couple paper towels. So that sits on there for about a minute. Textbook says a minute on these. It is not a particularly picky stain. If you get sidetracked and it's been a minute and a half, it's still going to work. And then you will rinse off the saffron in. Then you're going to use a paper towel to gently blot them dry. Very gentle. There. You're taking off the excess water. Think of it gentle like your face. Don't want to give it wrinkles. And then set it aside to let it air dry the rest of the way, and it's good to go for looking at. Any questions?